What's your favorite bad movie?
Mom, have you seen my peanut butter?
High five!
Jeez, that's not cranberry sauce.
Oh, watch me.
In part 1 of our story, the king of all of our nightmares, Freddy Krueger, has pointed his sharp finger knives towards his next victim, Jesse Walsh. Jesse Walsh, a young gay high schooler who has it all. He has a hot best friend, a functionally clueless beard, and a workable daddy complex with his school gym coach. But when Freddy Krueger decides to try and steal Jesse's body from him, it's up to Jesse, his best friend Grady, and the Lisa to try and thwart the evil mop pusher from beyond the grave. It's not going to be easy, but if they all work together, they might just have a chance. Oh yeah, and Jesse killed his gym coach in part 1. Like real bad. And his dad got attacked by a bird, and his face got all messed up like in real life, and things just started kind of going downhill real fast for Jesse. But don't worry, the Lisa's here to help. We return back to our scene, back in Springwood, at the entrance of Jesse's high school, which is currently crawling with police and medical staff, as Jesse's gym coach, Coach Schneider, has been freshly sliced and diced, like a kielbasa. Jesse returns to school the next day to find ambulances and crowds of people, and terrified, he runs up to the crowd to see what's going on. And that's when Jesse's worst fears are confirmed. Grady cruelly tells him that the coach is dead, sliced up like a kielbasa. The phrase instantly makes Jesse begin to reminisce about the day before, and while Grady probably thinks that what happened was a quick kielbasa and eggs for breakfast endeavor num-num, Jesse knows that this was an evening affair, over red wine and slow-roasted sausages. Jesse, trying to reminisce fondly about his former acquaintance, Coach Schneider, keeps getting interrupted by Grady, who just keeps yammering on and on about how the coach was hacked up in the shower, and that there was all this blood and all these footprints everywhere, which, duh, Grady. Jesse knows that. He was there. Sure, maybe everything didn't go perfectly, Maybe it wasn't perfect by your standards, Grady, but it was still a magical evening, man. And yeah, sure. Maybe Coach Schneider is dead. Maybe the boys' locker room is covered in blood. But it was Jesse's first, and it was special, damn it. And nothing that Grady can say is going to take that away from him. You can see in his eyes how hurt Jesse is from all of this. His private little engagement with the coach from the night before is now becoming public news. And shocked, terrified, he holds back the tears. Because no matter how hard Jesse tries to hide or suppress this side of him, it's just not working. He can't. He's failing at it. Hiding. Or concealing who he is, or what he's becoming. It's just not working. And now there's this impending sense that everyone is going to find him out and expose him for the monster that he is. And when they do, everything that he has built, all of his work, the carefully constructed lies around which his life has become so precariously positioned, no one left willing to stand by him to help him pick up the pieces. On a less allegorical note and a more practical one plot-wise, considering what we know about what happened, how much of Jesse's dream last night was actually a dream? We know the coach got hacked to bits. We also know that Jesse was out late last night wandering around naked, because he was found by the cops. Jesse dreamed that he killed Coach Schneider, so assuming that those things happened, the question then becomes, how much, if any of that, was actually a dream? Let's just do a quick recap and analyze it, shall we? Jesse gets up. Lightning strikes dishes. Jesse leaves house. Jesse goes to gay bar. Jesse orders beer. Coach Schneider catches Jesse. Coach makes Jesse run laps. Coach makes Jesse take shower. Coach gets killed. We see Jesse wearing the murder weapon covered in blood. Police find Jesse naked in the rain, which would wash the blood off. So, was any of that actually a dream? Or is all of that just the factual events of what happened to Jesse after waking up one evening? The more I watch it, the more it seems like it wasn't a dream at all. Later the next night, Jesse, once again drenched in sweat, wakes up to the sound of bad violin music. So he pulls himself out of bed while supporting this super confident bulge, and he opens his desk drawer, revealing Freddy's glove. And it's moving all on its own in this sexy kind of way that just screams, "Kill for me." Jesse, however, rejects the glove for now, wandering out of his room and down the hallway into his sister's room. There we see poor Angela, and she's probably got it worse than Jesse. Her whole room is nothing but a couple of white wicker chairs and some piles of stuffed animals. There's no beds, no books, no nothing. Because Angela has no bed to sleep in and no books to read, she's forced to spend all night just jumping rope to keep herself from falling asleep. Angela stands in the center of a room, practicing her jump rope skills while singing 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. And then we just transition to the next morning where Jesse comes downstairs and drinks his new favorite breakfast, coffee. He begins to drill his dad about the house's history like any good Nightmare on Elm Street protagonist, including the murder across the street, a girl going crazy, and a mother committing suicide. And luckily for Mr. Walsh, the toaster explodes right then, proving once and for all it's not the house that's cursed, it's just the appliances. So Jesse, of course, still very dismayed, but Lisa, with all of her worldly wisdom, she gets the bright idea to take Jesse to see Freddy's old boiler room in hopes of, curbing his anxieties. And this is where we find out that while Jesse has been having his little homoerotic breakdown, Lisa has been apparently playing Nancy Drew, researching Freddy Krueger at night in hopes of finding some way to help Jesse. Sadly, Jesse's psychic journey turns up nothing. But back at the Walsh's residence later that evening, we can see the furnace burst to life, seemingly on its own. We follow upstairs to Angela's room, where thankfully she's sleeping soundly, now with a bed. Mr. and Mrs. Walsh must have decided to make the quick decision to run down to Home Depot to get her some essentials before Child Services got involved, and we can hear Freddy's voice calling to Angela in her room. Panning back, though, we see Jesse's gross, sweaty torso. That's why he's having such bad night sweats. He just keeps sleepwalking and turning on the furnace. Jesse is wearing Freddy's glove. He has his claws out, and he is ready to kill his little sister. Luckily, Angela doesn't see him, and Jesse comes to his senses just in time, gently urge her to go back to sleep. Now, thankfully, Jesse makes the smart decision here, and he decides to stay awake. He starts popping caffeine pills and shotgunning them with Coca-Cola, which, I cannot emphasize how bad of an idea that is, but he follows it up with a nice morning breakfast of coffee, which will balance that whole concoction out. The caffeine pills and Coca-Cola, that will give you gut rot, but if you just add the appropriate amount of coffee to the mixture, it will even everything out, and you will have a wonderful morning. Jesse's mother, Mrs. Walsh, tells him that he's looking better, to which Jesse gives her a small eye roll. Mrs. Walsh, on the other hand, just avoids eye contact altogether with her son. Understandable. Back on the way to school, Lisa tries to get Jesse to talk about what's going on, and this is where he really breaks down the whole situation with his parents to her. Back in the lunchroom, we find out that Jesse is not the only one who's been having behavioral issues. Karen asks Grady about the party Lisa's been trying to plan, but we find out Grady won't be coming to this particular shindig. Which does suck, because he's probably Jesse's closest friend. Frankly, Grady doesn't get enough credit for, how much of a good friend he is to Jesse. He might disguise it as a rowdy jock, but he genuinely worries about Jesse. And he's loyal, he's trustworthy, frankly a pretty good guy. Anywho, he's been grounded for tossing his grandma down a flight of stairs, so he's not going to be coming to this particular party. And I don't know what the old lady did to deserve it, but I'm sure she did something to deserve it. Grady is a good friend, and I doubt he would throw his grandma down a flight of stairs if she didn't deserve it. But honestly, he's not going to be missing much from this party. This party is pretty stale, because even with Lisa's opulent-ass mansion and her half-Olympic-sized pool, her party just seems really lame. Her mom is out chaperoning, and her dad is just being a buzzkill, barbecuing and bitching about pool safety, and after 20 minutes or so of this, Jesse has just decided that he's not feeling the party at all. And so he tries to casually ditch out on Lisa. But not so fast. Lisa leads him away from the party proper to a private little bungalow where they can be alone. Come on, Jesse, you should have known better. This party was just one big excuse to get you alone, possibly drunk. Lisa knew what she was doing. This girl had goals, and she was not giving up on them that easy. Even if she can't get Jesse and drunk enough to go through with it, she's at least going to give it a toss. Thankfully, Lisa's mom shuffles off to bed, taking Mr. Weber with her, while the kids downstairs patiently wait for their bedroom lights to turn off so the real party can begin. Back at the cabana with Lisa and Jess, Lisa tries a small little talk to loosen him up, but it doesn't seem like it's working. Jesse, frankly, he tells her he's just not that into this. But Lisa, she presses on, insisting that she wants to help Jesse and that it's not just all about the D. Jesse starts rambling about how he feels like he's going crazy, how he's afraid to go to sleep and to stay awake, and that they'll haul him off to the loony bin. And this is just the kind of sensual pillow talk Lisa was looking for. She tells him that she's not going to let anything happen to him, and they get that look. They lock eyes. They lean forward and they touch faces. They get heavily into make-out mode while outside the party really starts with some peppy 80s music, and while the kids start freely jumping into the pool. Jesse is seriously trying to hold it together and just get the mission accomplished. But he can't. His Freddy side won't let him. And mid-makeout, a giant Freddy tongue flops out of Jesse's mouth and just tries to lick Lisa. Jesse conceals it, and he's out of there before Lisa can ask what's wrong. Leaving her hot and bothered and very confused, Jesse runs off to Grady's house and asks, To sleep with him? Okay, let me explain. Jesse tells Grady that he's killed Schneider, and that there's something inside of him. Something inside of him that is trying to come out. Jesse claims that something is trying to get inside of his body, and he's scared, and Grady thinks that Jesse is seriously losing it. He double-checks with Jesse to make sure Lisa is, in fact, out there in the cabana. Available. And he double-checks. But you want to sleep with me? Yes, Grady, that's what he's been saying. Don't make him say it again. Just let him cuddle. That's all he wants. Jesse has been thinking about it a lot, and he is very, very confident that if he's Little Spoon and you are Big Spoon, all the monsters will go away. And Grady, amazingly, Grady is a good bro, and he lets Jesse stay the night. He even agrees to watch over him while he sleeps. And so Jesse lies there on the floor and falls asleep, and after flipping through channels of television, finding nothing that sounds good, Grady eventually shuts off the TV and rolls over to go to bed. And right on cue, Jesse wakes up and tells Grady that it's happening again. Jesse doubles over in pain. Grady is completely unsure of what to do. Blades begin to pierce through Jesse's fingertips, and his forearms begin to shred, revealing Freddy's red and green sweater underneath. And Grady gets up and runs to the door, but it's locked. He pounds against the door, begging for his dad to open the door. Jesse backs into the wall and screams like a girl. Oh! And as he's screaming, Freddy's eyes peek out from the back of his throat. Jesse's physical transformation continues as Freddy's head starts growing out of his torso. He slashes at his stomach with his bladed hand, and Freddy tears himself out of Jesse's body. Grady, seeing the shredded pieces of Jesse on the floor, is now face to face with Freddy with nowhere to go. Freddy grabs him by the neck and sticks him with the glove, piercing through the other side of the door. Grady's now dead, and Jesse is just standing there. Freddy's puppet. Freddy now mocking him from behind the mirror as the police arrive. Jesse is forced to flee. Although how he manages to get from Grady's house to Lisa's house without getting arrested is beyond me. Back at Lisa's house, she's put on a fresh set of clothes and has a fresh new let's go find Jesse attitude. But right as she is about to leave, Jesse storms in. Covered in blood, frantically, Jesse tells Lisa that he's killed Coach Schneider, and now he's just killed Grady, and Jesse again tries to explain to Lisa. Freddy is inside of him. He is trying to take over his body. He puts this in the most curious of ways, though. He's inside me, and he wants to have me again, Jesse says. Lisa, just ignorant. It's the only way I can describe it. Because frankly, if a person bursts into my house covered in blood, telling me how they've killed several people, I'd believe them. But Lisa's just like, nah, you're probably just feeling overwhelmed. Oh, Lisa, you're about to get a very rude wake-up call here in just a moment. Jesse, he snaps his fingers at her, trying to get her to understand what is going on. Outside, the pool begins to boil. The hot dogs all catch on fire on the grill, and they start exploding. Beer cans open and start spraying beer everywhere. Back inside the house, Lisa sits Jesse down and begins to read Nancy's diary as if it were a Bible. And for all intents and purposes at this point, the diary is the Bible of this universe. Lisa tries to convince Jesse that they can stop him. That fear gives Freddy his power. That if they fight him, they can win because Jesse is stronger. She tells Jesse that Nancy was not crazy. Everything that you wrote actually happened, and that Jesse isn't crazy either. As Jesse announces that Freddy is coming back, random objects around the house begin to animate and doors and windows start opening and closing and locking. Televisions and lamps outside start exploding. Lisa's goldfish tank heats up and explodes as well, which is super sad. Those poor little goldfish, and in a move right from Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Jesse collapses behind a table and Freddy emerges on the other side. And for the next 20 minutes at least, this becomes Lisa's movie. She begins to fight Freddy, throwing things at him, trying to get away, and this is the closest we ever get to a chase scene in this movie. Lisa tries to run away, but Freddy catches her, tackling her to the ground and taking a big old bite at her leg. Lisa kicks him in the face, just barely missing Freddy's claw as he swipes at her. Lisa grabs a knife to defend herself while trying to talk to Jesse through his Freddy form that he's become, but Jesse just can't seem to hear her. Freddy begins to speak through Jesse's voice, telling her to kill him, while also reassuring her that he loves her. I love the psychological horror play that we have going on here. It's effective. Lisa tries to defend herself, but hearing Jesse's voice, she can only manage to pitifully stab Freddy in the shoulder. Freddy is about to kill Lisa, but he can't quite do it because Jesse just won't let him. Frustrated, Freddy tosses Lisa against the wall and runs to the back door, jumping through the glass, shattering it, and disappearing from sight. For a moment, everything seems safe until Freddy bursts from the ground, unexplained, and starts viciously attacking teenagers at Lisa's pool party. Freddy corners one guy and slashes him right across the face, and the screaming teenagers try their best to flee. But the gates and the fences lock around them, and suddenly they become scalding hot to the touch. 2 people fall into the boiling waters of the pool, and as they fall inside, the surface catches on fire. And one teenager tries to scale the fence, but Freddy burns him alive as well. All of the noise wakes up Lisa's parents, who are frantic for answers as to what's going on. Kim Myers cries "Mommy" here, and it's in a way that really conveys the feeling of a child who's been overwhelmed and feels helpless. But can you blame her? Her would-be boyfriend just turned into a monster outside and is literally killing her party.
This always happens every time. Every time I try and throw a party, something has to go wrong. Either Susan Doyle shows up and decides to change the date of her Sweet 16, or I have a pimple, or my best friend's repressed homosexuality creates a rift in the quasi-liminal dreamscape surrounding Springwood, allowing the transmuted specter of a long-dead janitor to re-emerge as a negatively personified identification of gay teenage angst. But, with finger knives. Honestly, I'd be feeling pretty powerless here as well, but fear not, because Lisa's about to get strong here in a minute. Back outside, Freddy's still successfully gathering all the teenagers to the corner of the pool area. And this is where we'll get our one and only non-Freddy kill, as the mob of teens trying to flee the pool party tramples and kills an innocent guest, and another teenager tries to run, but Freddy catches him, disemboweling him with his glove. A single guest has the audacity to try and talk some sense into Freddy in what is a vain attempt to try and help.
Help yourself, motherfucker.
Freddy shouts as he tosses Dude Bro into the grill, shattering it into pieces and leaving behind a pillar of flame. And after this, Freddy delivers my favorite line of the movie.
You are all my children now.
I've been following Elm Street lore for some time now, and I think that it's this scene that really gives Freddy the ability to reach more kids between part 2 and 3. Fully awake, Lisa's dad comes outside with a rifle, and he takes aim at Freddy. And he fires, but he misses his shot and obliterates the table next to Freddy in the process. Freddy snarls at him in return. As Lisa's dad reloads and tries to shoot at him again, Lisa runs up to stop him, convinced that Jesse is still in there. "Where'd he go?" asks Lisa's dad. But Lisa just runs away. She knows where to go. With the determination of any proper final girl, Lisa speeds to Freddy's old boiler room, determined to get back her men at any cost. However,
Now that Freddy has returned, the boiler room has become a funhouse of terrors. Immediately upon arriving, she is greeted by 2 Rottweilers with ridiculously misformed baby masks strapped to their faces. "Oh, hey, babyface." The baby-faced dogs snarl and growl at Lisa, but with giant porcelain masks on their face, they aren't really capable of doing much, so Lisa, she just presses on, deeper into the boiler room. Now, if you're asking, why didn't they just use the boiler room from the first movie, which had admittedly a lot more atmosphere than the boiler room we have here, it's because the boiler room of the first movie was torn down. It was covered in asbestos and was actually hazardous to film in there. So in this movie, they decided to use one that was not covered in asbestos.
But the asbestos is what makes it so scary.
Still continuing through the boiler room, Lisa can hear Freddy scraping his nails along some of the metal off in the distance, and she looks down and finds her bite wound festering with bugs. She panics and begins to brush the bugs away before they just sort of disappear. Just a figment of her imagination, apparently. She climbs up a walkway where she sees a mutant rat who is being eaten by a mutant cat. And at the sight of the alliterative rhyme, Lisa flees. She realizes that all of this was yet again just another nightmare. The walkway rematerializes underneath her again, and she stands up, and she's finally met face to face by Freddy, who slashes at her. Lisa runs. She tries to get away, but she quickly hits a dead end. And as Freddy closes in for the kill, Lisa desperately pleads to Jesse, trying to get through to him. But Freddy assures her that Jesse is dead. She continues to call to Jesse, and Freddy slashes her shoulder. As Freddy raises his claw for the kill, we can hear Jesse as he calls for Lisa. Freddy stops for a moment, showing hesitation as Lisa declares her love for Jesse, and as she does, the wounds on Freddy's chest begin to bleed. Lisa continues to call for Jesse. This is somehow working as Freddy is getting weaker and weaker, and Lisa tries to talk to Jesse inside of Freddy, and Freddy snarls at her, insisting that Jesse will die with them, with both of them. But Lisa, she kisses Freddy.
Ew.
But really, it's Jesse she's kissing. This is the final straw. Everything in the boiler room catches fire and consumes Freddy. And Freddy is burned to death and melts before Lisa's very eyes. The fires fizzle out and leave behind nothing but a charred corpse. But then, the corpse moves. Is Freddy still alive?
Oh God, no! Kill him now!
Nah, it's just Jesse.
Yeah, kill him now!
The burned, charred Freddy exterior crumbles away, revealing Jesse underneath. Lisa and Jesse embrace. The power of heterosexual romance saves the day once again. It was the 80s after all. And the next day, everything is bright and cheerful, and Jesse seems to be doing a lot better, you know? He seems to be having a good day. Finally, his relationships with his family have improved, and he's back to taking the bus to school. And on the bus, he meets up with Lisa and Carrie. Carrie laughs and tells Lisa that the party last night was great. I mean, never mind that several people died. And Jesse, he's just thankful and can't believe that it's all over. And Lisa, understandably, Lisa doesn't want to talk about it. Jesse, he's all too happy to oblige with that. But that's when the bus goes over a speed bump just a little bit too fast. And Jesse, he kind of starts to freak out. He begins to cause a scene. He starts shouting that the bus is going too fast. He stands up, shouting at the bus driver to stop. Stop! But then the bus pulls over to the side of the road, calmly, gently, and as the driver opens the door to pick up another kid, the driver, turning his head back to look at Jesse, he gives him this, "You're crazy, kid," kind of look. And Lisa and Carrie try to reassure Jesse that everything is okay. And Jesse, he actually starts to calm down. It's over. It's finally over.
But then the Freddy hand explodes out of Carrie's chest and the bus careens off the road, and all we can hear is Freddy's maniacal laughter, and
That, all my bad movie Among Us friends, that was the all singing, all dancing, no sub, all text, the queer horror sequel to Wes Craven's beloved horror classic. That was the one, the only, Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Freddy's Revenge. Now this movie may be over, but like a mountain lion school bus driving through the desert, this episode is still barreling on. So make sure and stay tuned for some fun facts about this flick.
So, Wes Craven actually refused to work on this film. He never originally intended for the Nightmare series to become a franchise, and as such, he had nothing to do with this movie. The production never intended to bring back any of the original cast, even going so far as to hire a stuntman to play Freddy, a decision which proved short-sighted, leading to wasted footage and time, as the shower scene with Coach Schneider was the only footage with Frank and Freddy that was actually kept. They luckily realized their mistake rather early on, hiring Robert back to reprise his role as Freddy. Wes Craven had taken issue with the movie, criticizing its overall plot, and also calling it weak while taking serious issue with the deviation from what Craven felt was his canon set of rules. Most notably allowing Freddy to leave the dream realm and enter the real world. For Wes, this seriously broke the rules he had established for his movie monster. He's also critiqued the movie for having a substandard script and being poorly produced. But his lack of involvement in the film means we have only regrets from Craven on this one. What we do get here, and what is so special, is the expansion of Freddy's sexual persona. Freddy's always been a very sexually predatory monster, and firmly identifying his predation as binary is both character appropriate and lends to a more terrifying monster. A fact that Robert was aware of, and something that he tried to lean into during the filming.
And a fact that Mark Patton had become all too aware of as well, as the filming of the movie saw the first time lead leaning into a feminine direction that he was nervous and unsure of how to address. What is probably more remarkable than anything is how gay this movie might have been if Patton had not been more concerned about stigmatization than he rightfully was. Other gay crew members, as well as Patton, were really the limiting factor behind many of these scenes. And it's understandable, because back in the 80s, this was essentially self-preservation. But if Robert had been able to lean in further, we would have seen a much more dynamic relationship between Freddy and Jesse, which would have been super fun. But given the social climate, this movie probably never would have succeeded like it did, and may have even been inadvertently shelved. The movie's debut really relied on a lot of people not catching on to how gay this movie actually was. People were pretty clueless about homosexuality back in the 80s, and I suppose one straight kiss thrown in at the very end of a movie is enough to make people forget about an hour and a half of blatant gay metaphors. So this movie managed to fly under the radar. And for a while, it really looked like it was going to be able to keep itself tucked away in the closet, disguised as a poorly made sequel to a beloved horror classic. That is until the gay community started pointing out all the not-so-hidden subtext in the movie. Once people started vocalizing these all-too-obvious motifs, all of a sudden everyone was magically able to see the giant gay pride flag that had been in front of them all along, which back in the 80s was a problem. Patton was hoping this movie was going to skyrocket his career. 3 problems, though. Patton was gay, the film was dripping with homoerotic subtext, and at the height of the AIDS crisis, homophobia was running rampant. As such, it became much harder for Patton to convincingly remain in the closet. His career was effectively ruined. He only did a couple of TV roles afterwards, before quitting acting and moving to Mexico. The documentary Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street goes into detail on Patton's experience with making the film and its aftermath. The movie, which you should have seen by this point, it portrays Jesse in a very feminine fashion, and this left him typecast, right as his movie career was getting started, and at the worst possible time. Hollywood, and America at large, had remained oblivious to the AIDS epidemic. For many it had been far removed from their lives, but the death of Rock Hudson in October of '85 saw the nation reeling. Rock Hudson's homosexuality was a big surprise to a sheltered country, who saw the famed actor as the pinnacle of masculinity. Hudson's contracting the virus and subsequently dying from the disease shook the nation, and his death left all of Hollywood feeling vulnerable. Nightmare on Elm Street 2 would premiere just 1 month later, and Mark Patton would find himself villainized as a gay panic swept over Hollywood and the nation at large. The timing couldn't have been worse. Anti-gay propaganda would spread from ads to news and finally to the public consciousness. Mark Patton did try, unsuccessfully, to rebuild his damaged persona, but the damage was too great, and changes to perception on homosexuality and AIDS were a long way off. Patton would contract the disease himself in 1999 at the age of 40 and subsequently would contract pneumonia, forcing him to be hospitalized. The disease nearly killed him, but he did recover. And Patton, He did what any self-respecting middle-aged gay man attempting to run away from his problems would do in that situation. He packed off to Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, where he hid from the public, found himself a husband, and opened a small art store. And there he remained. And as the film became more prominent, now growing in popularity for the same gay subtext which it had been so nearly shelved for 2 decades ago, there started becoming a real incentive to find Mark Patent. He was wanted for interviews, for guest appearance, and for panel discussions, but nobody had any idea where to find him. He had remained hidden until finally a documentary film crew got up the gall to hire a private investigator to track him down. A not too easy task. But alas, he was finally found. Like we said, we've already touched on this subject a little bit, and Scream Queens goes into it more, but they did track him across the border all the way to Puerto Vallarta, which is some real Dog the Bounty Hunter style shit. And Patent, he did finally agree to be interviewed, but it was mostly in exchange for David Chaskin publicly admitting that yes, he had in fact written the movie with a gay subtext. And Chaskin sneakily admitted that, yeah, maybe he kinda knew what he was doing all along. And Patent, in exchange, he told the story of how his career Hindenburged after this movie, and how he was stricken with HIV, and how he subsequently fled the country. Which, it's a bit of a rough story, but at least ends on a better note. You see, Patent, having finally been caught red-handed doing nothing wrong, has started attending nightmare conventions, doing guest appearances, and while doing so, he's become an outspoken advocate for those inflicted with HIV. He works to sponsor various LGBT and HIV charities and donates most of his guest appearance fees to similar causes.
The director of Freddy's Dead, Rachel Talalay, actually worked behind the scenes on this movie as well as several others. She, like many, criticized the film for having a weak script, but she was also heavily critical of the choice to have a leading Nancy boy instead of a leading Nancy, which frankly is one of the few things that stands out and makes this film unique. So if you want it to be both bad and boring, then sure, go ahead. Robert Englund was not initially asked to return as Freddy, because New Line thought that they'd be able to use any old stuntman for the part, and thus be able to pay him next to nothing. Within a week of filming, it was clear that the stuntman in question, whose name has never been publicly stated, was not up to the task. His movements have been described as more akin to a Frankenstein's monster than Freddy. He was shortly fired and replaced with Englund, but a small bit of his footage remains in the shower scene. It works out well, since that scene is actually supposed to be Jesse doing the killing anyway. Since then, Robert Englund has continued to work on the Nightmare movies, reprising his role for all the sequels and the television spin-offs with the exception of the 2010 reboot movie. Robert has had an interesting career, to be certain. His father was a renowned engineer in the field of aeronautics, and helped to develop projects like the Lockheed U-2, a privately developed, well, frankly, a spy jet. Robert began studying acting at only 12 years old. He studied at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Arts, and began his acting career on the stage, doing regional theater before making his film debut in the 1974 noir crime drama Buster and Billy. Robert would bounce around a few acting roles, landing side gigs in movies like Stay Hungry and A Star is Born. His big career-defining hit, though, would of course always be Wes Craven's 1984 horror masterpiece, Nightmare on Elm Street. Speaking of Wes Craven refused to work on this film because he never wanted or intended to have the first film become an ongoing franchise, and even wanted it to have a happy ending. He also didn't like the idea of Freddy manipulating the protagonist into committing the murders. Heather Langenkamp was never asked or even considered for the producers to return for this sequel. Of the entire cast of the previous movie, Robert Englund is the only actor to have returned, and even then, only after the filmmakers thought the movie was in trouble. This lack of care for a canon character would only happen again twice in the rest of the franchise, in Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare and Freddy vs. Jason. For the most part, the creators would do their best to rescue living characters from previous films. Rachel Talalay, the director of Freddy's Dead, actually worked behind the scenes in the first 4 movies, including this one, of course.
This movie had a troubled production, and it started with the fact that the movie was greenlit the very weekend the first Nightmare movie came out. This may seem like standard procedure for sequel greenlighting nowadays, but back then it was virtually unheard of, especially if it was an R-rated horror film. This resulted in a rushed production. Then there was Wes Craven, not wanting to return. He did at least agree to consider directing the second film, but eventually backed out after hating the script, as it had been written without his involvement. She would only finally return to the franchise in parts 3 and later 7. Actual filming went smoothly for the most part, although Mark Patton had large objections to the infamous Touch Me dance scene. While Patton himself was gay, he thought the scene was too gay even for him. He did his own choreography, which was far less campy than the choreography which was originally planned. As an interesting additional little factoid, the climactic pool party massacre had actors not knowing when explosions were really going to go off. Nobody was acting in that scene, by the way. Their scared reactions were absolutely real. Fortunately, the film was a success at the box office and managed to gross more than its predecessor, but it wasn't nearly as well received. Fans claimed that the film broke a lot of what was the canon rule set, complaining namely that Freddy spent too much time in the outside world and that Freddy using other people to kill for him went against the idea of his character. Fortunately, these complaints forced Wes Craven to return to the next film, albeit as a writer.
Let's take a look at what could have been, shall we? Brad Pitt and Christian Slater auditioned for the role of Jesse Walsh. Michael J. Fox was also considered, but he was busy with Back to the Future and Teen Wolf. The exploding parakeet's designer had initially made a demonic version of it for its scene. It was thought to look more silly than scary, so it was scrapped and replaced with a realistic puppet. In the original script, the ending on the bus is different. Instead of a random female friend, Lisa would have been possessed by Freddy, and would attack Jesse in the final scene.
Robert Englund has commented on the film's various homoerotic subtexts, saying, Part 2 has a really interesting bisexual psychological thing going for it. We didn't hit it over the head with a nail, but it was certainly there. Not completely unlike the volleyball game in Top Gun. Part of it's just there for window dressing, but part of it's really there.
Another interesting fact is that Part 2 is responsible for naming the town Springwood. If you recall back to the first movie, it's not actually stated what the name of the town is, but now we know, it's Springwood. According to Elm Street 2 director Jack Shoulder, the task of naming the town fell on them, and thus Shoulder picked Springwood, which is the town that he had previously used in a film called Alone in the Dark.
There is an effect in this movie in which you see a close-up of Freddy's eye inside of Jesse's throat, and it's an interesting effect, but it's also notable because it's the only time a female has ever played Freddy in full makeup and costume, because she was the only one who was able to fit into the mechanical rigging that they had made. It was essentially a large bust of Mark Patton that Freddy would then be inserted into so that you could see him through the throat. Alright, let's get into some fun facts about our actors, shall we?
Yes. Let's shall. For our first fun fact, Mark was diagnosed with HIV in 1999 on his 40th birthday. He starred with original Nightmare Final Girl, Heather Langenkamp, on the third season of the show CBS School Break special entitled Have You Tried Talking to Patty?
After recovering from pneumonia, Mark moved to Puerto Vallarta, and now owns an art store with his husband Hector Morales Mondragon, which is the coolest name I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
He starred on an 80s ABC TV show called Hotel, which featured over 400 guest stars and was written by Aaron Spelling, father of Tori Spelling.
Nightmare 2 was Mark's last time playing a leading role, as he was only playing side characters in both Hotel and Have You Tried Talking to Patty. And the last movie he did in 1989 was Misplaced. No, the title is actually called Misplaced, in which he plays basically a featured extra named Roughneck. 6 years after the Never Sleep Again documentary, Mark returned to acting in the 2016 horror movie Family Possessions.
1 year later, he'd star in one of Amityville's long line of straight-to-DVD trash sequels, this one called Amityville Clown House. Fun. Mark now frequently tours horror movie conventions for fans.
Mark donates most of the proceeds he receives from these conventions. He has been lovingly dubbed by fans the first male Scream Queen.
Next for fun facts, we have Kim Myers, who played the Lisa in this movie. Kim has continually maintained her acting career throughout the years while also attending horror conventions to meet with her fans. Despite her long list of 46 acting credits, Kim has only appeared in one other horror movie in her career. Funnily enough, it belongs to another iconic horror franchise. She played Bobby in Hellraiser Bloodline. In 2004, Kim starred in a small indie project called The Dust Factory, which is where she met her husband, writer-director Eric Small.
Next we have Robert Russler, who played Grady. Rustler had a very physically active childhood. In his youth living near Waikiki Beach, he competed in surfing and skateboarding competitions on a semi-professional level. When he moved to LA, he learned martial arts and competed in many tournaments. It was only after Rustler graduated from high school that he wanted to try his hand at acting. 2 years after graduating, Rustler won the role of Max in the John Hughes classic Weird Science.
Rustler has been in a number of horror movies since Nightmare 2, including Stephen King's adaptation of Sometimes They Come Back, Vamp, and Tales of Halloween. And like Patton, Rustler has also starred in an Amityville sequel. Rustler's was Amityville: A New Generation, so that gives us 2 reasons to watch 2 more Amityville trash movies.
I've actually seen A New Generation.
I have not.
It's about a haunted mirror.
Oh, I think you've shown me some shots from that one.
Yeah.
I would like to watch that one. While researching this episode, Nohea also stumbled upon an old FMV space shooter game called Wing Commander 4, which not only features Robert Rustler, but also features Mark Hamill.
And lastly, for our actor trivia, we have Clu Gulager.
In the same year as Nightmare 2, Clu had also starred in Return of the Living Dead, forever cementing him in the hearts of many horror fans.
Clu's son John is the creator of the horror franchise Feast, in which Clu also stars as the gun-toting bartender. As of 2022, Clu is still alive at the ripe old age of 93, making him the oldest actor alive of the Nightmare franchise. But fun fact, Nightmare 3's Zsa Zsa Gabor still holds the title of the longest-lived actor of the franchise at 99.
Well, with fun facts out of the way, should we get down to our most favorite, least favorite?
Hell yeah!
Alright, what do you want to start off with? Should we start off with scenes, actors?
Why don't we go with actors?
Alright, so let's start off with our least favorites. Nohea, what was your least favorite actor in this film?
So my least favorite is Sydney Walsh. She plays Carrie. She's Lisa's best friend, and it's not so much that I don't like her, it's more that she's just my least favorite. Because it's like a lot of her lines, or a lot of it are just obnoxiously boy crazy. She's like that greasy friend that's like always like, so, but what about sex? You know, like all the time.
Right, like, yeah, but what about sex though?
Yeah.
Right. Oh my gosh. Right.
And she spends the entire time at the pool party just like macking on some guy that she's not even that interested in.
Right. Speaking of Pia, I've been 3 watches in on that Butterfly movie, and I'm maybe 15 minutes into it.
I don't know how you do it.
I'm trying to chip away at it. I'm legitimately hoping it is going to get less gross as Pia becomes more focused on the silver mine and everything like that, and being able to, you know, rip her daddy's boss off for some money, as opposed to her other inherent interests in the movie.
You be careful. The deeper you dive into that haystack, you might get stung by a needle.
Right. That's, yeah, Butterfly's a rough watch. Not necessarily a suggestion. My least favorite, though, honestly, and I think we both kind of agreed that most people did pretty well in this movie.
Yeah, they did.
We didn't have a lot to criticize. I wasn't going to criticize Mr. Walsh or Mrs. Walsh because I like how they performed their roles. They're not my most favorite actors in the movie, but I also think that they serviced and did what needed to be done. And so in that vein, really, what do I say? I mean, I guess Jesse's my least favorite because he's just way too sweaty in several scenes. He's grossly sweaty.
Yeah, he does sweat a lot in this movie.
He does sweat a lot in this movie, and I know it's the props department, but I mean, I don't even know how you got that much water to cling to his body. I mean,
he's just, offset. You don't see the mister.
Right. They just have a chemical shower offset that they just flush him under in between takes. Just jump under the chemical shower and they just flush him with water.
Or maybe it's not actually water, it's just oil.
I wondered that too. Like maybe it's Vaseline or oil or something that'll stick a little bit more.
Right.
So that they can adhere some of that to him. Really get him sweaty up in there, like unnaturally sweaty.
Right.
But honestly, as much as I make fun, it's not Mark Patton's fault. He does pretty well with Jesse.
I do have a special nod. And Bob Shea, who's the head of New Line Cinema, he plays the bartender at the gay bar.
Yeah,
who's like, wears like all that weird like get up.
He seems like the bartender at an S&M joint, and how he did not know it was a gay scene is beyond me. If we didn't mention that, Bob Shea wanted to be in this movie, was put into the S&M bar. He was dressed up in full leather, and somehow walked away after shooting this and having a sweat-drenched Mark Patton
still in his night jammies, come up to him and ask him for a drink before getting pulled away by his coach, also dressed in S&M gear. Somehow, Bob Shea walked away from this, no idea that it was a gay movie.
You know, he had his daughters dress him for that scene, too.
Oh my god, and they must have had so much fun with that.
I think they did.
Right.
They actually, I read that they were ushered out of the adult shop because they were underage.
Oh gosh.
Because they were, and like Bob Shea didn't see the problem with it because they just saw it as his daughters giving daddy dress up.
Right, how old were they?
Underage.
Underage. Did they know it was a gay role, or were they just having fun dressing?
I think they were just having fun because they knew that it was supposed to be an S&M bar, and they were just throwing leather.
Just throwing leather.
Whatever stuck.
Right. It's such a fun little scenelet, though. I really do enjoy it.
Yeah.
Who's your most favorite?
Freddy, of course.
Yep, most favorite's got to go to,
Robert Englund he proves in this movie just why he won that role. Like, you can't have Frank and Freddy playing Freddy in their entire series. It's not going to work. Robert Englund needs to play him.
Right. No, I've got to go my favorite for Freddy, too. He does so well. He has some of the best lines in this movie. I know you're looking at the script. It says Grady written down there, but I can't even go with Grady. Grady does really well.
I do love Grady, too.
That's why it's so hard to choose a least favorite actor in this movie, because it's a bad movie, but everybody really does perform pretty well.
I also do think that Lisa, Kim Weber, I think she does really do a good job carrying that last 15 minutes of the movie.
Right, she does. She does. Her character serves throughout the entire thing. She's believable.
Yeah.
Right, and especially watching it in a modern context where nowadays you're not supposed to have any of the subtext be text. It's just supposed to be full-on visible because it's so visible.
Right.
It comes off completely believable that Lisa is, Mark Patton's best friend, doesn't realize that, or that she's Jesse's best friend in this case, and that she doesn't realize that Jesse is gay,
right,
and is legitimately trying to get a piece of that, trying to get her that nice, stable man. And Jesse, he doesn't necessarily fully realize he's gay either.
Yeah, she's like Leah in Love, Simon.
Exactly. And she does a good job in that role, and so it's hard to hate on anybody too much. But Freddy, he really does stand out. He does a particularly good job playing himself. Robert Englund always delivers, but I really enjoy a lot of the Freddy lines in this. I enjoy a lot of the body language and a lot of the direction that he pushed Freddy in this one. And I think we developed the Freddy character so much in this movie that it's really hard not to...
Did. Yeah.
Yeah. It added a lot to the Freddy character and his whole sexual predation dynamic.
And going off that note, I do think that with each Nightmare sequel, you do get a little bit more of that Freddy lore, and it just keeps building upon itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so, I think favorite's got to go to Freddy, and there's no big surprise there. So, no, favorite actors, both of us were saying Freddy. Let's get on to our least favorite scene, shall we?
Least favorite scene. So my least favorite scene is the bird scene, where they're about to go to bed, and the bird cage starts rattling. The birds start freaking out, and one of them explodes. I just don't really care for that scene.
And that's actually funny because I really enjoy that scene. Maybe because it's so corny. I think a lot of what I like about it is that the actor who played Mr. Walsh, Clu Gulager, he actually got injured. And
yeah, he did.
Not only does his injury show for the rest of the movie, I think it shows in his demeanor for the rest of the movie as well.
Yeah, he's grumpy.
His grumpiness, and it adds to the character, and it just plays as real.
It really does.
That being said, it's a corny little scene.
Years later, he still does not like that scene. He still rants and cusses about it.
It's pretty unbelievable that he got so badly injured by a toy bird,
Yeah. So, Alan, what was your least favorite scene?
My least favorite scene. My least favorite scene is really probably the pool party scene, and it's half divided between the, yes, I agree that Freddy shouldn't be entering the real world. That's not actually my entire issue with the pool party scene. My big issue with the pool party killing spree scene is really more that you have Freddy kind of shuffling left and right in front of that pool. and it makes Freddy look disorganized. Yeah, I get there's this group of people and he kind of has all these people to go after, but it just removes a bit of the Freddy dynamic where it seems to me that Freddy is always predating on a single person and really truly messing with their mind. And there's something about the seeing him shuffle left and right in front of the pool just with wherever to go as opposed to a very specific direction.
Yeah, it'd be like seeing Michael Myers running.
Right. Michael Myers shifting left and right, not sure where to go.
Right. That's more of a Jason thing.
That's more of a Jason thing. Yeah, exactly. Michael Myers, he walks slowly, but he knows where to go, you know. He's not so much getting lost. And it's a little bit of a clumsy scene altogether. You have kind of a confusing amount of kills in that scene. Mm-hmm. And so there's just a couple of things about it that aren't particularly great and really aren't my favorite.
I do have a special nod. I don't particularly care for the scene where Jesse is sleeping at school and there's like the giant snake that's crawling on him. It doesn't really fit well with like the movie with me.
It doesn't really make sense how the snake
got out and got onto him and how no one freaked out about it.
Up until that point, but now he's being blamed.
Right. That also struck me as odd. It's like, why is Jesse being blamed? He fell asleep and a snake crawled on him. So he used to join the circus?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that scene does seem a little bit off, and it's a little bit conceptually weird. It doesn't...
Right.
It's not scary in any way.
No, it's not.
And it doesn't do much to add to the whole concept of Freddy taking him over.
Right, it doesn't.
That being said, it's also our kind of in-school hallucination scene. And with so many other options for in-school hallucinations, I just feel like, yeah, a lot of them are light touch with the mirrors in the bathroom and things like that, but I'd rather have a nice light touch.
Well, I mean, compare this scene with the scene from the original movie where Nancy falls asleep in school and sees her best friend in a body bag standing outside in the hallway. That's creepy as fuck.
Exactly, yeah. As opposed to, oh no, Jesse's got a snake on him.
Right, exactly.
Oh no, why did it have to be snakes?
I mean, you even have, like, later entries in the franchise revisiting the school nightmare scene with, like, the scene in 4 where she has the asthma attack in school because Freddy sucked the life out of her.
Right, and I really like those school scenes. They're really...
Yeah, they fit. They feel very Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, they're very place-setting for me, and so it was kind of a weak one, and that's definitely a weak point, I think, in the movie. I think that's a good point out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as your favorite scene, what's your favorite scene in the movie, Noe?
My favorite scene, I can say hands down, is the scene where Freddy rips out of Jesse. I feel like it is the most iconic shot of the movie. That scene where, like, Jesse has his hand out and, like, the knives are coming out of his nails. I think that's just one of the most iconic shots of the franchise.
Right, it's also one of the most elaborate practical effects in the franchise, too.
Yes, and it's well deserving of it.
Yeah, so definitely an awesome scene.
Yeah, and it also has a pretty decent kill on top of that, with a pretty likable character. Grady's a good character.
And it's kind of the whole premise establishing scene.
I know, right.
For the movie, yeah.
Yeah, it's like the kind of like, it's kind of the gay subtext kind of coming to fruition.
Right. Now, I said that I really like those school scenes because they're so place-setting, and to me, my favorite scene in this movie is the very beginning. The bus scene, I think, is so well done.
The bus scene is easily my second favorite, too.
There's little details within the driving that seem noticeable. It instantly, with the music and the color tone and the lighting and the bus driving down the road, you instantly know where you are. And we're going right to our protagonist, right inside the bus, and we are instantly dropping into a Freddy dream. So we're not playing around at all, you know. Mm-hmm. We break right through the school dynamic, right into a nightmare, and do it very quickly and effectively. And I feel like the mesa, the whole canyon breaking away around the bus, is just fantastic. I really appreciated that.
Also one of the most iconic shots of the franchise.
I love the driving right off the road. It just, it seems so subversive, and I really like that. And then you get the continuation of that scene in the end of the movie where they do it again. Yeah. So it's a really great way to start and finish and kind of wrap the whole thing up.
I do remember watching that scene as a kid and having Freddy approaching them while he's like dragging his nails across the seats. Having sat on the school bus myself, it scared me a lot.
Right? Yeah, no. The scratching the seats and everything as he's going along, it's really good.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that. And having Robert be the actual bus driver, little details done throughout that segment are just fantastic and really get you in the mood for the movie that we're about to watch.
You know, Nightmare on Elm Street 2 has come a very long way. It's actually got a very similar trajectory to other movies like Halloween 3 or Friday the 13th Part 5, which weren't very liked in the very beginning of its career, and has actually grown a lot of love over time.
Right. Halloween 3 is my favorite of the franchise. Love Halloween 3.
Halloween 3 is fun. And it had a similar trajectory as Nightmare 2 for me, where I didn't like it very much as a child, but as I've grown older and more mature and understand its themes a little bit better, I've grown to really like them.
Right. Again, yeah. There's definite issues that Nightmare 2 has. It definitely fails in some serious ways. It makes some big mistakes in the movie. But it does give us some really substantial things that the franchise will lean on for the remainder of its tenure. You know, I don't think Freddy is ever going to be a heterosexual sexual predator again. I mean, I think his dynamic is pretty well established by this movie. Mm-hmm. You know, I think
he preys on anything.
He preys on anything and anyone, most preferably younger.
Yeah, preferably younger.
Preferably younger. Legal age? We're not gonna say. No.
I do think he has a type, though.
He has a type, right? Vulnerable.
Right. Blonde. Except for that one brunette that got away. How does this stack up as far as the other Nightmare movies for you? If we were to put the Nightmare movies in rank, where's 2 actually stacking for you in rank? It's kind of middle high.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the mood that I'm in as far as where I'm liking Nightmare 2.
Because I like 1, 3, and 4 more than 2. I think 2 will fall after those 2. It would be tied with 7.
Right. I just feel like you get some really good Freddy dialogue in 2. That's really great.
Some amazing dialogue with Freddy.
Really good physical acting with Freddy in 2. Some of the best, honestly, in the series.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it probably stands about in the middle, though, for me, too. The Nightmare on Elm Street movies, I mean, frankly, as far as I'm concerned, none of them are perfect. They all leave a bit to be desired. What I think stands out so much from those movies is the character.
Mm-hmm.
That Robert Englund has created. That Freddy Krueger character is better than the movies are. That's always what I've said about it, and that's really how I feel about it. That Freddy Krueger is better than the movies he's respectively in, and that this adds a lot to who Freddy Krueger is as a character.
You could say the same for Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees with their respective franchises, too. Especially with Jason, yeah.
Yeah, would you really understand who Jason was if he hadn't have gone to space and had to struggle like a real astronaut? You know, seeing Jason Voorhees have to go through the Buzz Aldrin experience and really just craft his way out of that spaceship, I think let me understand him a little bit better as a person. Didn't it?
You guys hear that? Alan is being facetious.
I'm always being facetious. Okay, so fascism out of the way, let's get down to our good movie, bad movie ratings, shall we? Alrighty, good movie, bad movie ratings. Let's start off with the good movie ratings, like always. What's your good movie rating for this one, Noe?
Good movie rating. I think I'd give it like around a 6.5. At the end of the day, it does have a really good premise under its belt with the gay themes of it all. I think if done modern day, it would be actually a better movie. And it deserves some props for that concept alone. It does have some really good scenes. Robert Englund's great. It does have a good story behind it now with Mark Patton's disappearance and rediscovery. I think all of that elevates it to about a 6.5 for me.
I'd probably give it about a 6. I feel like it's a slightly substandard horror movie with a really above-standard horror character. You have good actors who perform well, but no performances that are just beyond outstanding besides England's. The whole culmination realization of the horror concept in the movie does kind of fall flat as far as horror goes, because it does become a little bit the power of love will save us, I feel, for the horror concept. So I'm going to leave it around a 6 as far as a good movie goes.
And what would you rate it as a bad movie?
So, my bad movie rating.
All right. So we don't have any big name actors.
Besides Robert.
Yeah, besides Robert. Robert is a pretty big deal, and especially to us. But you know how sometimes I like to see a really big name actor in early career. We don't get that here. We do get a remarkable backstory. That's great bad movie territory right there. I mean, the whole Mark Patton thing, the whole disaster of the movie, plus the actual scripting of the movie and how gay it is, that's a lot of subtext to dig through as far as the movie goes. So there's a lot to digest. That's pretty meaty. The Robert Englund sticking his glove inside Mark's mouth, that's pretty great as well, you know. You get a lot of things like that throughout the movie. I think as a bad movie, it does really well. It only fails in a few areas. It doesn't have a lot of cringe, and it doesn't have a lot of bad line delivery, but it's not the kind of movie that actually needs that to rely on it. I'd say it sits probably around a 9 for me, as far as bad movie rating goes. I mean, and especially if you're looking for, you know, as we are in Gay Pride Month, especially if you're looking for a gay bad movie, this is a really good one. It's also a gay bad horror, which is pretty unique. That definitely, I think, makes it earn that 9. What score would you give it, Nohea?
For me, it gets a whole point above my good movie point, so it'll be at a 7.5. I feel like there's a lot of fun bad movie stuff. All the times that Jesse screams like a girl, how gay this movie is. It can be fun bad movie. And it's unintentional at that. And I think that's just something special that it's unintentionally gay. I mean, Mark knew that it was gay, Robert knew that it was gay, but everybody else seemed to be oblivious.
At the point where you have underage children picking out what ends up being one of the gayest outfits in the movie.
Right, no doubt. We're looking at you, Bob.
We're looking at you, Bob Shea. Thank you for your performances, Bob Shea. We love you. Right. So I think that's respectable. I think it's 7.5. As there are some really good bad movies out there. I think this one has plenty that makes it shine and stand out, though. I don't think either of us are denying that.
Right. That gay dance number with Jesse cleaning his room elevates it a whole point.
Oh my gosh, the dance number is great. It really is.
Like, as far as why is Nightmare 2 a bad movie, you could show people that scene, and I think people would understand.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree. All right, I think we've said about everything we have to say on Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Do you have anything else you want to say on Nightmare?
No, I don't think so.
Alrighty. With everything out of the way on Nightmare on Elm Street 2, let's get down to the roundtable wrap-up, shall we?
Yeah.
Nohea, what are you up to?
Well, I just beat Elden Ring. I got the moon ending with Ronnie the Witch, and a lot of people have speculated that that ending leads on to Bloodborne, which I think is pretty fun. I've heard a lot of people are going back to play Bloodborne, and I think that's a big reason why. Because that ending sets up for the beginning of Bloodborne, with the moon presence being the elder god that terrifies Yarnum. But, you know, that's lore videos for Fati Video for you. Besides that, I've been playing Triangle Strategy. I think I'm almost done. I think I have like about 3 chapters to go. It's a fun game.
Triangle Strategy looks pretty awesome. I love the combat system in it, and I've only been hesitant in getting into it mainly because it's a little bit wordy.
I mean, it's meaty, but I mean, after the first couple of chapters, the story gets very investing.
If you're a fan of JRPGs, it's exactly what you're looking for as far as story goes. You know?
And it has so many branching storylines and pathways that it has replayability. It's a very hard game if you're playing it on hard.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, I think I've lost some hairs over it.
Right, and then it doesn't let you restart battles in the middle of battles. It makes you play them out to the end, which is...
Oh yeah, and that's frustrating and a headache on its own.
But on the bonus side of that, even if you lose the battle, you still gain experience.
Which is great.
Yeah, so it does kind of balance out in that sort of a way.
Yeah, so if I know I'm losing, I usually will just do random junk just to level myself up before I inevitably die. I don't need to ask you what you're playing. I know you're playing Snaky Bus.
I've been playing Snaky Bus, and I've been essentially setting new records about every week or so. I just set one here just earlier yesterday?
Yeah, you did.
Yesterday. 1,850 bus lengths, number 2 in the world on Museum. You know, that kind of stuff.
On the PS4 part.
On the PS4. Oh my gosh, the PC high score on this level is 3,000. I'm shooting for the PS5, PS4 version high score, which is 2,047. 2,047 bus lengths. Yeah, so I'm at 1,850. getting there steadily. I got some nice raps down, so I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. And then we got another little roguelite game. And every once in a while, I'll find roguelites that I get into and that I can really enjoy, and then most of them I just buy and then never play. Like, I'll play for 5 minutes, and then I'm like, it's cool, and then I never pick up again. This seems to be one that I'm picking up. It's called Curious Expedition.
Curious Expedition's a lot of fun.
Yeah, Nohe's been playing it with me. You choose an explorer, and you go on various expeditions to various parts of the world in a hexagon movement style that's very much reminiscent of first edition D&D. It's an interesting little game, not too taxing, and pretty entertaining to play. I like a lot of the kind of stories that you're able to generate, and I know that it's all auto-generated stuff, but just sometimes with a good roguelite, you get some of those kind of fun little stories that you create yourself, and I really enjoy that kind of stuff. So, I mean, in this particular one, me and Nohea had a character who, I mean, they were doing real well. They were very profitable. They had been, just busting out the expeditions, coming in first, coming back with tons of treasure, big old team, until we raided a temple and got stuck in between a hawk, a panther, a coyote, and about half a dozen spiders. It was pretty hilarious.
So then what did we decide to do?
We decided to camp.
And they just camped all around us over the 7 days that we slept there. No one died or anything until we moved, and then everybody just slowly got picked off one by one as we tried to make our way to the temple.
We camped for like a month there, just hoping they'd go away. They didn't go away.
No.
We had another expedition that was, again, going swimmingly. We had a good cast, a good crew. We were heading into this cave, exploring it. We went into the cave, and our cook disappeared.
Uh-huh.
But in his place, a horrible, horrific, malformed abomination appeared.
It looked like the Thing.
It looked like the Thing, but then we look at his stats.
And the stats are just beast.
And it says he seems friendly, right? He has crazy attacks. He has crazy toughness. And we're like, okay.
Yeah, we'll take you along.
Right.
And for
a moment, I felt like we had run into the John Wick character from Fallout 1.
So to clarify this story, Alan is referring to this character we ran into at a bar in the original Fallout game, and we paid him money to accompany us on our adventure because we kept dying. And John Wick was a bullet sponge thief? Bullet sponge tank.
Well, see, I have this thing where I often try and kill all of the characters in games where you can kill any character.
Much to my dismay.
Much to Nohea's dismay. But, in between saves, I did this. And in getting in a fight in this bar, you quickly find out that John Wick, who you paid like $100 to follow you around or something, he will destroy anything that is aggro against you. Yeah. Do not play with him.
He's like the bodyguard from that Tina Turner movie.
It's horrific. It's like you get in a fight with one guy, and that guy tries to punch you, and John Wick shoots him twice in the face, and that aggro's half the bar against John Wick, and he just levels the place.
Oh, yeah.
And then you're like, oh, cool. Nuka-Cola for free.
Right. But anyways, the Abomination.
The Abomination. So we're hoping that the Abomination is going to be this, like, John Wick character and everything. Everything's been going pretty cool. We're traveling along. It's been a little while.
The native tribe wants to eat him. We tell them no.
Yeah, we tell them no. We're like, no, you can't have him, and you can't have our donkey. We travel further. It's nighttime. We're camping. The Abomination attacks one of the villagers that has joined our troop of adventurers.
We hear them screaming in the middle of the night.
It asks us what we want to do. Do we want to help protect them against the Abomination?
Or do we turn around, look the other way?
And we're looking at this guy's stat blocks like, dude, this guy's tough. Like, maybe this is just a one-time thing, right. Maybe he just had... Because sometimes people are racist in this game, and sometimes they have particular dispositions, and maybe the Abomination just didn't get along with this particular person.
So we let him have Naked Butt.
Yep. Just eat him right there.
And then we went on with our journey. And then...
The Abomination attacked the donkey in the middle of the night.
The next night.
And we would have liked to save the donkey, but the reality is, we're looking at the Abomination stat block, and it's like...
We don't have the ability to fight it.
The Abomination eats the donkey.
And then it eats our last soldier.
And then it attacks us.
And then we die because we have nobody to defend us.
That's against the bomb grenade.
It's just like hubris.
Oh, I know. It's a fun little game, though. It's definitely really cute, and we've been having a lot of fun with it.
I mean, I had another one where I was an all-woman expedition team, and I think my nun became cannibal and ate the other girl, and then I was just me, and I left the other girl to die. And then, yeah, I died, too. I died right outside the temple, too. I wrote a note.
We, despite what we had said on the previous podcast, here's really how it went down, right? So, previous podcast, we told you guys all about Resident Evil, the final chapter, and it's gutting, eye-wrenching torture that it portrays upon you with its horrific editing that will make you want to curl over and die. So, where we last left off, we had told you that we'd only watched the first 30 minutes of it, and we'd given up on it. And so then I decided to...
It bothered us.
It bothered us. Well, here's the other thing. I think about this other bad movie podcast that I listen to, Bad Movies Rock. No, I realize that Bad Movies Rocks, they do like full series of movies. They'll do like every frickin' movie in a series. It's like their jam, right? I'm like, oh god, I'm pretty sure they've done Resident Evil movies, and that probably means they've done it. And I'm like, no, hey, do you think they did the final chapter?
Of course they did.
And so I check, and yeah, they watched through the entire movie. They watched through all of that. They're still alive. Both of them. They've made episodes post that episode, so...
We know that they didn't die of a seizure.
Almost certainly didn't die of a seizure.
Or that they did, they were replaced by the Stepford podcasters.
Or an abomination. And in any case, we felt obligated really, to finish Resident Evil. Oh gosh.
It was rough.
It was rough. It took a couple different attempts.
I don't think I ever want to watch that movie a third time.
Oh gosh, no. No, I mean, I could listen to the audio from it. It's pretty worthless audio to listen to, but I could do
It's
that.
awful audio. It's going to be mostly just... Alice!
Oh my gosh. How those girls made it through it, I don't know. After, 3 attempts, we finally finished the movie.
Oh yeah, it took 3 attempts.
It gets edited a little bit better as you go on.
Not much.
Not much. It is just brutal on that editing. Again, what a gory, horrific movie, just the way that thing is cut. It is just so assaulting. But yeah, we finished it. We did actually complete Resident Evil, the final chapter.
And thus also the entirety of the Alice series.
The entirety of the Alice series. I would sooner watch Rubber than I would watch that movie again.
We intended to talk about this movie in the last episode. I can't believe we forgot to talk about it. We've watched Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Amazing.
Oh yeah.
One of those movies that truly spoke to me on a personal level.
Instantly made my top 5 movies of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of those movies where you only get a few of these in a lifetime. Kind of like watching Fight Club for the first time, where it's really something special. And for me, I've listened to other podcasts talk about Everything Everywhere, and they enjoyed it, but I do kind of feel like not everybody... it was a movie that's enjoyable for everybody, but I think it might hit a more personal note for people with more issues with disassociation. So I think there's kind of a specific kind of person that movie's speaking to, and it spoke to me pretty heavily. I'm not gonna lie. Made me cry a lot.
Alan normally doesn't, but he was bawling.
Oh, yeah.
But so was everybody else in the theater.
I cried during that movie, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel so silly because I don't know how anybody could cry during a movie like this.
Where you have someone running around with a raccoon on his head.
And with people with hot dog fingers. And at the same time, then I talked to all of these other people who then also just bawled because of this movie. And it's really touching. Mm-hmm. Everything Everywhere All at Once is... It's made by the same directors who produced the Turn Down for What video.
Oh, yeah.
And to watch them go through some of their different artistic styles and really develop and hone their craft, this seems to be where they have now stepped out and they have figured themselves out.
Alan hasn't seen Swiss Army Man yet, which I plan on showing him eventually sometime soon. But if you haven't seen the short video Interesting Ball, I feel like it is the perfect concept video for Everything Everywhere All at Once, and it is free on YouTube.
And see, Interesting Ball, although interesting and weird, is nothing compared to Everything Everywhere All at Once to me.
It's just a taste.
Exactly. Right. But yeah, really amazing movie. I could not recommend it highly enough. I really don't recommend movies on that kind of level really, ever. It comes with, I say, my highest recommendations. I mean, really, for a good movie, this is my absolute highest recommendations. I could not suggest any movie that I've enjoyed more in the last decade than Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I think that's fair to say for me, too.
So, with our movie recommendations out of the way, Nohea, what books are you reading?
I'm still on the Bachman books. I finished the second novel in that collection, which was The Long Walk, which I had a very surreal experience reading that book. So here in Spokane, Washington, every, I think, first Sunday in May, is Bloomsday. And this year, Bloomsday fell on May 1st.
Bloomsday, if you're not familiar, it is a 7-kilometer race that has about 50 to 70,000 participants every year.
And the premise of The Long Walk is about a walking competition where 100 boys participate, and if they fall below a certain speed limit, they're given a warning. On the third warning, they are shot point blank on the side of the road. And reading it on May 1st, while Bloomsday is happening, very surreal experience.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It definitely made me think about, oh man, what if all these runners, whenever they got tired and they stopped, man, hits different. But now I'm on Roadwork. Roadwork is the third of the 3 of the 4 novelists. And I'm not quite digging this one as much. It's finally picked up over 100 pages in, where now it's kind of like narrowing down about what the actual premise is. But I'm looking forward to finishing this one off. What are you listening to, Alan?
I have been listening to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I've absorbed that content on a variety of levels. I've watched the movie. I've watched some of the British miniseries. I've played a bit of the text-based adventure game, which is just fantastic and was recreated by the BBC about a decade ago, and there's just a great iteration of it on their website if you want to play a really, truly, despicably hard text-based adventure game. That being said, it's a really good adaptation of the text-based adventure game.
I think I still have nightmares about trying to get that babblefish.
Yeah, we made it pretty far in the game. You just die and die and die, and it is so hard. And so now I'm actually listening through the series. I've really wanted to put a text-based adventure game in my docket. I'd like to beat one. I'm not sure exactly what rule set I'm going to go for actually trying to complete it, because if you've ever played them, I'm talking something like Zork or something like Hitchhiker's Guide. Those are kind of my competitors right now. I don't feel like there's any way I'm going to be able to beat them quite organically, so I'm trying to come up with like a partial guide that won't quite get me all the way there, but will make it easy enough that a mere mortal could compete it within a standard lifetime.
No, I think I actually have your solution. I found this website called a hint guide, and basically it shows everything, all the solutions as hints. So if you're just stuck and you want a small portion of the solution,
that's what I want.
Then you can just click on that small portion of the solution. It doesn't give you the full one, and if you're still stuck, you can further along until it gives you the solution.
Because there's aspects of those text-based, like with Zork, with the maze. At first I thought the maze, no way I can do that, but now understanding...
We eventually figured it out.
Yeah. Understanding the premise of how the maze works, you can then start to map it out. If you have pen and paper and you actually take the time. So yeah, that's a great idea. I will definitely have to check out that hint guide. That's super exciting. All right, do we have any new shows we're watching, Noe?
Well, this being our Nightmare on Elm Street 2 episode, I think it's only appropriate that we have mentioned that we have discovered Freddy's Nightmares. It's free on Tubi.
Oh my gosh, I know. Every time you find something that's just so interesting, and then you're like, where do I stream this?
Free on Tubi. Yeah, Tubi's great.
Yeah, they really are. It seems like every time you want to find something, Tubi's there, getting your back. And Freddy's Nightmare, they have it. That being said, it's bad.
Oh, yeah. It's one of the lower-end anthology TV shows I've watched.
Yeah,
and I've watched a few.
And we enjoy anthology TV shows. Still happy to be able to digest it, just to be able to slurp it down,
Right.
Because I love Freddy. I love learning a little bit more about him. Essentially, you're watching different people in Springwood that he has either directly killed or killed through their nightmares and just messing with them. The fun concept that they have for this show.
Yeah, I love that concept. So the first half of it is like either one teenager, and then the second half of the episode will follow their boyfriend, their best friend, there's someone else in their lives that is also going to be targeted by Freddy.
Right.
Or whatever nightmares that they're having.
Yeah.
And I think it's just great. I think that's a really fun dynamic. I mean, granted, most of it is going to be the same. It's just going to be the first half of the episode just repeated. But it's still fun.
And they're corny. And I mean, we were watching episode, and it's like...
It's like those bad FMV videos that we've played.
Yeah, they're like bad FMV videos without the choices.
Yeah.
Alright. I think we've made it for time, Noe. I think we're running a little bit past, actually.
Okay, well, we should wrap this up.
Let's go ahead and wrap it up, shall we? Okay, everybody. If you don't know where to find us on Twitter at BadMoviesAU.
At Instagram at Bad Movies Among Us.
Find us on Facebook. The page is Bad Movies Among Us. So, and if you're feeling so inclined, because I know it's financially difficult out there and a lot of people are burdened with just too much money, weighing them down, physically making it hard for them to get through their days. We have a Patreon.
If you give us enough money, we'll convince Vera to do an OnlyFans.
Right.
No, I will not!
But